Hi everyone, and welcome to the Scrapped Green Paper protest, our second one. I'm here, one of the organisers, and I'm going to be your MC for today. But today we cannot start without acknowledging a loss to the disabled community. The organisers were very upset this morning to hear of the passing of Charlie Bird. So we would like to take a moment of silence to remember an amazing presenter and an amazing advocate for motor neuron community, which he was a member of. So I'd like to take this moment of silence, please. Thank you, everyone. So, today we have 11 amazing speakers, 8 of which are disabled because nothing about us without us. Woo! But I want to take this moment to recognise that these speeches are going to be potentially upsetting. This is a protest built on anger and sadness and disappointment in the government. We are being forced to potentially work when we have already proven that we are not able to. As you can imagine, there's going to be some upsetting topics mentioned here today. I cannot give you a full list of trigger warnings, but please be gentle with yourselves. Remove yourselves if you need to, take a moment, walk away, come back, put on headphones, take out your phone, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself. This is a topic that affects so many of us here today and our loved ones. It is okay to be sad and angry. It was sadness and anger that created this coalition. And on that note, speaking is hard at the best of times. Speaking on subjects that affect your daily life can be very intimidating. So I want to say a huge thank you to all the disabled speakers today that are being so vulnerable with their lives. And I ask that you respect that vulnerability and keep conversations to a minimum. If you need to have them quietly or move away. Please just respect that it is hard enough to talk publicly without talking about such sensitive topics. And on that note, I want to see if we can all get a rally going. So if I say, what do we want?
Scrap the green paper.
Scrap the green paper.
Good job. What do we want?
Scrap the green paper.
What do we want?
Scrap the green paper.
What do we want?
Scrap the green paper.
Ottawa. Yeah, let's keep that message going, and we are going to start with an amazing activist, Daniella, who is representing Neuro Pride. And I have the honour of being Daniella's friend, so I am very happy to be able to introduce them. And while we're at it, I want to point out, see all this lovely graphics that you've all got to see over the past few weeks? Danielle is the one who created those. We are so privileged to have such an amazing artist to give their time to the campaign. So without further ado, Danielle on behalf of Neuro Pride.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on another cold day to make noise about why the government needs to scrap the screen paper. I'm Daniella, speaking for Neuro Pride Ireland. The government may add addendums to the Green Paper on disability reform, saying that nobody will be forced into intrio, nobody will be forced into work, and nobody will lose their payments. But these promises have no value to us when the process itself has been in direct contravention of the rights of disabled people under the UNCRPD, which says that our DPOs need to be part of the decision-making process from the beginning. The government has put out these addendums and pretend as if we are wrong about the Green Paper, as if we haven't read it, and that they're just clarifying the contents. They act as if telling people about the contents of the Green Paper is to spread misinformation somehow. This is the kind of gaslighting we're used to as disabled people. The governments say that nobody will lose their payments when it says in the Green Paper that the newly created personal support payments will now be time limited, unlike the current disability allowance. The governments say that nobody will be forced into intrio when the paper and the civil servants responsible for it said that there needs to be the same pressure applied under these measures as they apply to lone parents. The governments say that nobody will be forced into work, but what is it then to deprive a person of enough to live on if they don't go out and work? Even if somehow these promises are all true, it will still mean that we are tiered, largely incorrectly, by the supposed severity of our disabilities, a dehumanizing process. It will still mean increased surveillance of our lives and increased regular medical assessments for people who are quite often experiencing medical trauma, especially neurodivergent communities. They will expect more evidence presented to them from doctors and professionals about our lives when we are already on long waiting lists for scans, consultants, occupational therapy, tests and every other service. How will this in any way help this constant crisis? And it will still mean means testing and keeping disabled people from having relationships and keeping us in poverty. The government has ignored the Disability Matters Committee evidence on what disabled people need in drafting this Green Paper, just as they ignored disabled concerns about the referendums at the weekend. It doesn't matter how much they dress up their ableism as concern, we can always see through it, and we cannot be ignored. The Green Paper must be scrapped.
Woo! Scrap the Green Paper!
Woo! Thank you, Daniella. So, a few more amazing speeches. And next up, we have the fierce feminist ourselves, Dr. Margaret Kennedy, which some of you may have seen on the news and likes over the past few weeks. Sorry, Margaret. And just to know, you know our lovely banner we have here? After all the speeches, feel free to come take a selfie, but make sure to use the hashtag scrap the green paper, because we need everybody knowing about this. We might be here today, but there are thousands more across the country that are affected. Margaret.
Good morning everyone, or afternoon everyone.
Woo!
I am very glad to be here. I am going to celebrate who I am. I am a 71-year-old granny activist, the crip with the whip. The fierce feminist. I have a rare neuromuscular degenerative disease. I'm 71 years old and still advocating, and it's a very... I am a citizen of Ireland. I'm advocating for all of my friends and relatives that are disabled. It is a shameful indictment on this government, and for many a shameful indictment on our health services, that we struggle to live independent quality lives on equal terms with others. Ratifying the UN Convention on Rights for Disabled People in 2018 has made little impact on the quality of my life, and other disabled people have said the same. I accuse my government of ableism. That is They seem to think that their only duty is to non-disabled people. Thus, laws and policies are entirely without reference or inclusion of sick, elderly, disabled people. And if they are, only in a way so as to restrict and deny services and support. Who's my helper here? Now, for those of you who might not know what ableism really means, it is a mindset that believes that non-disabled people come first. It is the ableism that creates our lowly status. I call upon this state to implement, not strive, or nor endeavour, but to provide a service to disabled people, sick people, and older people. Create the equality, create the human rights, value disabled people, sick people and older people. Let's not forget why we're here today, because of the consultation with this green paper to reform disability services. The government intends to give us another hammering. This is not reform. This is not how you do it, to create a green paper and call it reform. It is not about reform, it's about clawing back, cutting back. Is a conservative agenda. The government wants to push through another humiliation, a new disability bill. The Green Paper proposes to categorise disabled people for the purpose of restricting benefits, forcing disabled people, sick people and vulnerable people into training or to work. It was a right-wing British policy, this, designed in the UK, and suicides amongst disabled people in the UK rocketed after it was put in place. We won't let this happen here. We refuse to allow Irish citizens, disabled citizens, sick citizens to be dehumanised further with a category and a label from a government agency. This is not reform. This is an attack. We won't let it happen. We refuse to be categorised. We refuse to be assessed. We refuse to be labelled. And we refuse to bow to the ableist agenda. We will fight for our lives. We will fight to prevent suicides in our disability community. We won't let it happen. Woo! On Friday, we stopped an attempt to corral us to prevent us living independent lives. We demanded state support for ourselves and for our families. And it is ableism that made all the politicians, bar one party, want to vote yes in the most vile, clear constitutional article the state has so far designed. Woo! Aim to deny services, to force families to support us, to deny state responsibility, to deny independent living and equality of life. Not only for us, but for those who support us. We barely get the crumbs from the table. The government and even opposition parties try to have this enshrined in our constitution, that the only place where we could live would be with our families. The only place we would receive services and support would be our families. The state would offer nothing. Do you know something? Under the UN CRDP, we already have the right to live independent lives under Article 19. We already have the right to choose where we live, Article 19. We already have the right to the services to be put in place, Article 19. The government colluded to ask the population to deny us our rights that we already have under Article 19. Unfortunately, Article 19 is not really being used because we haven't got the legislation yet. We believe the people of Ireland knew what had been said and done and didn't like it. We now know our population, our fellow human beings and citizens, do support us. So now, in your failed attempt to destroy our life, I call upon this government and others to make a sincere and meaningful apology, public, to disabled people, sick people and elder people and their families for the wording of the referendum, Article 42B, now defeated by public demand, in which we were portrayed as burdens on the state. I call upon the government to make a sincere and public apology to the carers, mainly women and families, who valiantly supported and who have supported their loved ones, sometimes for years, without totally inadequate support from the state. I call upon the government to make a sincere apology to disabled, sick, older persons for attempting to manipulate the people of this state to collude with you against our best wishes, choices and decisions, into being trapped in our families with no options to escape and live independently, contrary to Article 19. I call upon this government to make a public apology to disabled people, for those disabled people who are living in families that are not good. This article could have trapped people in abusive situations. This government said there were families that would look out for it due to the bonds therein. Well, some families, some disabled people do not have a family with bonds. They are abused, neglected and ignored. That could have been very dangerous for many disabled people. I call upon this government to make an apology because trying to seek the Irish population's approval for this sort of article was appalling. And I call upon them to make an apology for attempting in the referendum to delay and refuse responsibility for providing services. And now, to try and force disabled people to be categorised like cattle or sheep, or some such thing. It's inhumanised to categorise human beings in such a way. We are not falling for it without agreeing to it. We're not agreeing to it. What are we saying?
Scrap the Green Paper!
Well, I was going to say something different there. No, I wasn't really. What I was going to say is, look, this is serious stuff, folk. We are in an era now that we have to fight. We have to fight. I'm 71. I hope I keep going on. But we have to fight. We're living in a country that's one of the worst European countries to live in as a disabled person. It is not right. We want our human rights. So we're going to say scrap the Green Paper, but I'm going to ask, what do we want?
Scrap the Green Paper!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Scrap the Green Paper!
When do we want it?
No!
What do we want?
Scrap the Green Paper!
When do we want it?
No!
Jolly good. We're all on the same page then, aren't we?
Thank you, Margaret. And I think I'm not the only one that says we don't want the Green Paper scrap now. We could have done with it a few months ago. But next we have Pauline Tully, Sinn Féin's spokesperson on disability. And I think we have had some very conversations in the Disability Matters Committee over the last few months.
Ciara, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to come here today to address you on your protest, calling on the government to scrap the Green Paper. And can I say, I absolutely and fully endorse that call. This Green Paper was wrong from the start. There was no prior consultation with disabled people or DPOs, so therefore it is absolutely flies in the face of the UNCRPD. It is totally in contravention. The paper itself, from what I hear, the document was not accessible. A green paper was not even explained. It caused a lot of concern and upset for people who might have thought this is what's actually going to be introduced. Now, the government were at pains to say, okay, this is only a green paper, there will be opportunity for consultation before a white paper is produced. But even from what I hear, that consultation was very poorly organised as well, and a lot of the venues inaccessible and things not taken into account. When we go to the paper itself, it proposes a 3-tier system whereby people will be categorised according to the complexity of their disability and also on their ability to work. Now, this is just smacks of the British system, which we know is an absolute failed system, and I'm very concerned about how you propose to categorise people into tiers. I mean, there are people with quite complex disabilities who are in work. So are they saying that these people will not be allowed to work, or that they will not be entitled to an increased payment? We do support the right to increase payments, but it shouldn't be based on whether or not you engage with intro around finding work. I mean, some of the words used, I think, is a reasonable offers of places on training and employment courses. What's reasonable? I mean, these things are very unclear, very dissatisfactory, and they cannot be accepted. In relation to work, a lot of disabled people I know are very willing to work, they want to work, but there are barriers to them working. Those barriers could be accessible transport, it could be accommodation close to their place of employment, it could be access to a personal assistance service, it could be access to assistive technology. There are a lot of barriers. There are barriers among employers as well, because there's a lack of awareness there, and a lack, I suppose, that they don't even understand or want to engage with disabled people and employ them. So there has to be more onus put on educating employers and instructing them on increasing the number of disabled people in their employment. But nothing in this document addresses those barriers. Nothing addresses talking to employers. And in fact, there seems to be a conflation of the cost of disability with the ability to work. And those things are not, they're linked, but they're not interdependable. I mean, many people who choose to work, who want to work, who can work, the actual cost of disability increases, because again you have all of the issues like I've already outlined about the transport, the PA service, the assistive technology, etc. So, cost of disability is not actually addressed by increasing the numbers who are in work. The cost of disability, we know, on average, according to the indicated cost, which is the same department actually produced that report, is anything from 9,000 to 13,000, and that's average. For some people, it's actually more. Excuse me. So I don't know that this department should actually be addressing the cost of disability. Yes, we need to see increased finance given to people, but we also need to see increased services, and we need to see increased access to employment. We are one of the laggards in Europe. Ireland has the lowest rate of employment for disabled people in all of Europe. I think we have the same rate as Greece, but when you take into account the economies in the two countries, our country is a rich country, and yet our employment rate is so low. Now, what caused me great concern was in a conversation last night with one of our local election candidates in the upcoming election in June, and she's a wheelchair user. And she actually said that to her, from some of the consultations she took part in, that there seems to be an effort to actually reduce the number of disabled people on the live register by putting them into voluntary work placements. Now that's very, very concerning. And she actually told me that she has never been in paid employment in her life. It has all been voluntary, which is totally wrong. So look, I absolutely support your call here to scrap the Green Paper. Myself and Daniella O'Leary, who's a Sinn Féin spokesperson on social protection, have actually engaged with quite a lot of organisations and disabled people, and we have a submission going in. The submission date has actually been extended now for some reason. I don't know why they just don't scrap the whole thing, but anyway. But anyway, look, it gives us an opportunity to make even more submissions against this. So, Ciara, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, we were very happy to hear about the extension. As much as we want this scrapped, disabled organisations were put under immense pressure over the past few months to be able to discern this 34-page document and try to figure out and consult with members, all this stuff. Yeah, and so we were under a hell of a lot of pressure, so we did call for a second extension. We called for the first one as well, and as happy as we were to have that little bit of grief, this does not mean we let go of the pressure. We want this scrapped. So next up, we have two incredible artists, and I am so happy to have them speak. So Tara and Áine.
Woo!
Thanks, Kim. Hi everyone, I'm Tara Carroll and I'm part of Chronic Collective with my best friend Áine O'Hara. And we strive for disabled artists to access art and disabled audiences. So we're here to talk to you today about this disgusting foul green paper. And I'm going to start my speech the same way as I did before Christmas, because it is the same. We are tired, we are so exhausted fighting for our rights and being left behind. We've seen it in the last few weeks how heavy parties and organisations were campaigning to casually remove the rights of the disabled community constitutionally in the guise of white, ableist, racist, feminist progression. And we ask all the people who turned up to take action and raise their voices and heard our voices to vote no, and we want those same people to be standing here with us again today. Should be here standing in solidarity with us again to put their words further into action. If you, excuse me, because we need you to be here shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with us. We are the fastest growing marginalised community in Ireland, and this is in the face of the housing crisis, the living cost crisis, the crumbling HSE, climate change, and for the biggest reason, as our government perpetuates mass disabling offence here in Ireland. They continue to destroy our community, and while simultaneously adding to its growth with conscious ignorance to COVID. And over in Palestine, with our disabled siblings, our government doesn't take impactful actions against genocide. And they stay complicit in the perpetuating a mass disabling event. Our struggles and the struggles of all marginalised communities intersect. Fighting against this vile green paper that will be detrimental to our community is also about fighting for everyone that is constantly left behind. They want to force our community to be part of a capitalist machine when our very bodies are an act of resistance. They feel threatened by us, so let them feel scared, as we are not going to stop fighting, not now or not never, until this paper is scrapped and until we are all free and equal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. I'm so emotional after hearing that. Here?
No, just a static.
Oh. I don't know how to make this static.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. Sorry about the sounds. I also hate sounds. Yeah, I want to echo what a few of the people that are here today have already said. We're living in a terrifying time for sick, disabled, deaf people. With the referendum, this green paper, talks of euthanasia, continuing COVID. It's no surprise to me, as we see more and more people become long-term disabled by COVID, that the government are trying to tear us, to humiliate us, to wash their hands of us. This green paper will means test us, force us into dehumanizing examinations and surveillance, and force us into low-paid schemes. On behalf of artists, I want to particularly talk about the fact that this will keep us out of an already elitist sector. This will lead to fewer of us being able to be part of that creative sector. It will force us out of work and into schemes again. It's clear to us that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are at that dry path trying to follow in the footsteps of their favourite colonisers over in Britain. We do not need... We have seen in the UK what this has done to disabled people. We have the proof of the suicide rates going up when this scheme was introduced there. They already hire British companies to manage social welfare here. It will literally be the same companies that will manage this if it comes in Ireland. We need to scrap this months ago. We need to get rid of this months ago. This is not going to do what they say. It's not going to help us work. It's not going to help us in any way. And it's all a smoke screen to get us off of social welfare. Woo! Before I go, I just want to talk to some of the parties that are here today, and I really appreciate you coming out. I really want to ask you to talk more to us, to connect more with us. It was clear in the last few weeks that you did not engage enough with the disabled or caring community at all. You were advocating for yes, yes votes and standing up in the Dáil saying that the government was not listening to disabled people. You were not listening to disabled people. We need you to think a lot more before you campaign on this. We need you to engage with us a lot more and listen to us a lot more. And most of all, help us get this green paper scrapped. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, you are completely right. Whether it is an organisation or a political party, remember to speak to those that are most marginalised. For us, that's disability, but that goes for all marginalised communities. No point coming out after the fact to say we should have. Do it in the future. We have asked politicians to pledge their support to scrap the green paper. We have responses from every party bar two. No prizes for the guesses. And I want to make sure that all of you hear this today. Because we are going to get people knocking on our doors over the next while with all these elections. Make them hear our voices. They need to stand accountable to us. They represent us. That is their job. Do not get to come for good photo ops and then don't put the work in the meantime. Before I get the next speaker, there was something else that Tara and Áine brought up, and that was the suicide rates. And I am grateful for every single one of you for showing up here today. But I am also grateful for every disabled person at home who can't make it, whether they are too sick, whether they are fearful to be out where so many people aren't wearing masks. And yes, I know I sound like a hypocrite. My anxiety is not allowing me to do it today. I apologise. But that's the important thing. mask wearing allows for those of us who can't. So, thank you all. Thank you to all that are at home. And we remember those that cannot be with us and will no longer be with us. So, on that note, I'd like to invite Richard Boy Barrett after the politicians get in a beat down.
Thanks very much. And listen, all criticism taken and perfectly understandable. But first of all, I want to say that People Before Profit are 100% and have been since the beginning of your fantastic campaign with you in demanding that this insulting green paper is scrapped and scrapped immediately. As the second last speaker pointed out, and I think she's absolutely right, this is the sickening, dehumanising logic of money and profit and of a system that has a twisted notion of what is profitable being the only thing that is viable for their mentality, and that is a sickening, ableist and dehumanising ideology, and it must be resisted, because the starting point for politics, for policy, should be the fact that we're all human beings. And that we're all treated equally as human beings, and the terrifying logic of not doing that, I think people have well testified to here for the disability community. As a friend of mine, when we were discussing the referendum before the weekend, who's a wheelchair user, he put it very, very simply, and he just said, for people with disabilities in this country, living in Ireland is an absolute nightmare. And I know that that is the justified feeling that people have, and they are right. But you do see, as that speaker said, where this awful logic goes when you look at the horror of dehumanisation that we see in Gaza at the moment, as tens of thousands of people are killed, maimed and injured in the name of the same sort dehumanising, horrific logic. So we are standing against that, for humanity and against dehumanisation. And this green paper is the embodiment of that dehumanisation, because it is creating the idea of a league table and competition of disability, ability to work, severity or complexity of disability. And that is a disgusting, dehumanising logic that should be absolutely resisted, and is driven precisely by that sort of Tory mentality that the main parties in this country exude, and is a carbon copy of what the Tories have done in Britain. It is absolutely disgusting, and we stand with you 100% in resisting it. It is only because of 11 years of campaigning by many of the people here, like Margaret and Bernard and Tom Clonan and many others, that previous government were forced eventually and reluctantly to ratify the UN CRPD. But they absolutely made sure that they wouldn't be legally accountable for the equality that the UN CRPD is supposed to vindicate by refusing to ratify the optional protocol. So the anger of the disability community is more than justified, because we know while the government want to pay lip service to the disability community and to the notion of equality, they do absolutely nothing in reality to provide the services, to provide the resources and supports and the legal accountability to actually vindicate genuine equality for people with disabilities. But I think you can say that you have sent them an unmistakable message over the weekend. That is a message they cannot ignore, And you are absolutely right to follow it up with this protest, and we stand with you 100%. And I do think you're winning. The fact that they have put back the submission date, it's not enough, but it shows that they are on the run. And it shows that your campaigning, your protesting, your determination can win and put these people on the back foot and force them to finally vindicate your rights. So we stand 100% with you. They need to engage with your community, and we all need to engage more. And we fully accept that, and our door is completely open to your suggestions, your ideas about how we do that and do that properly. And you can take it as our commitment that we stand 100% full square behind you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And I think this is the word that is so important today, rights. It's the one that keeps coming up, because as we all know, disabled rights are
Human rights!
But I want us to remember while we are all here that a huge percentage of the disabled community, especially the neurodivergent community, are also queer. And many people here today are trans and non-binary, and I please ask that people respect that and not assume pronouns just by what we look like. So next up we have Declan. Declan is a councillor for Labour in Cabra, Glasnevin, and one of us.
Hello, my name is Councillor Declan Meenagh. I use he, him pronouns, and I want to say, as one of the very few disabled people in politics, I wish I wasn't one of the very few disabled people in politics, but we hopefully will have more people involved. But like the rest of society, it can be quite inaccessible. I have a rare genetic eye condition. I have about 5% sight, and I studied computer science. I was not forced or categorised to do that. I got a job. I was not forced or categorised to do that. And I was appointed to Dublin City Council, and I was not forced or categorised to do that. And the fact that this green paper, first of all, it's in the wrong department, because it is in the department of the government paying out money to people. And whether the Department of Social Protection should pay money to people is one thing, but whether the problem around employment is how much money people get is nonsense. The problem to employment is ableism. And I know, standing behind the James Larkin statue, which side he was on, which side my party's on, and how a recognition that this is not about blaming people into employment. This is about getting rid of ableist barriers. I think it's fair to say it's been an interesting weekend for disabled people in politics. What I can say is that I would urge you all to look at the Labour submission on the Green Paper, because we have listened. We've engaged with DPOs, we've engaged with disabled people. In fact, disabled people within the party worked on it. I worked on it. And in that, we recognise that medical assessment is a waste of those medical staff's time, and they would be much better being on the front line actually helping people instead of traumatising them. We recognise the ableist abilities and we recognise the ableist barriers to employment, and we talk about how the cost of living for disabled people is higher. And we know this because the government commissioned an Indicom report and promptly dumped it in the back of a filing cabinet and did nothing about it. So we have a real problem now with this green paper being extended into the middle of the summer, and we really do need to keep up the momentum. But everyone nearly has their submissions done. But I think what you do is you have a copy of your submission, maybe 5 or 6 of them, print them off, and whenever someone comes to the door, you hand them to the candidate and say, I want you to fully support it. And finally, we need a more accessible politics. And I genuinely hope that we can have a Scottish-style support system for candidates, so that I have had access to a PA support while I campaign. We need to go on the PA Now campaign, and it was my privilege as the last local authority to propose a motion that Dublin City Council called for a PA service. And on rights, every other country seems to have this vague understanding that you have a right and you can sort of assume the service will be provided. We don't have rights in Ireland, we have fears. We have fears that the person allocating the service is going to have a bad day and throw us some bureaucratic nonsense. We have a fear that the HSE, who can't seem to figure out Excel, will run out of money in one part of the country and deny us services for no reason. And we have a fear that someone in Intrio, who doesn't know what they're doing, will not be able to recognise our disability. So I think we need rights. And we demand rights, and I look forward to working with you all to deliver them. Thank you.
Thank you, Declan. I'm going to hand over my MCing duties for a few minutes.
No. Okay. Loads to say, but I'm not going to say it today because I'm always talking. So I am. I'm always chatting. Is Declan laughing at me? That's Labour. Anyway, yeah, but I got the biggest laugh of the day. No, I've been tasked with introducing someone who's our voice, very much so in political life and public life. He's advocated for the disability community all his life, all his son's life. He's a carer, like me. He's a staunch believer in equality for people with disabilities, for giving them the tools that makes them shine and helps them meet the potential we see in particularly our children who are born with disabilities. But we've seen when you do give them the opportunity that they grow and shine the same as their able-bodied family and friends. This government doesn't see that, but we see that. I met him first years ago. We've become great friends. I'm a true believer in his campaigning, in his voice for our disabled community. We've become great friends, which has meant a lot to me over the past while. Tom is a great advocate for the disabled community, for the caring community. And I'm so happy that he's my friend. So we're going to put it together for the man who is our voice, who called it as it is, Senator Tom Clonan.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I want to thank all of the DPOs here for inviting me. We've had a tremendous weekend with regard to the Cllr referendum. Over 1.2 million Irish citizens went to the polls and voted for our right, our inalienable human right to services and supports, because that's the legal situation throughout the European Union. We're the only country in the European Union where disabled citizens and carers do not have the legal right to therapies, supports, interventions. And if that wording, that ableist wording, had gone through, that would have given constitutional expression to the notion that disabled citizens do not have a right to an autonomous, independent and fulfilled life in the community, in the social, economic and cultural life of this republic. In relation to the Green Paper, I've tabled private members' bills in the Seanad. We've debated this in front of Minister Humphreys, and make no mistake, government senators are in favour of this Tory document, a document which purports to medically examine over 250,000 disabled citizens on their capacity to work. These are citizens who cannot get medical interventions. We have disabled children on the urological list, on the spinal list, who can't get the medical interventions for them to grow and develop as young men and women. Young girls who cannot get vaginal reconstruction. Young boys and teenagers who cannot get the medical interventions, and it leads to, I don't even have the words for it. It leads to erectile dysfunction, ejaculatory dysfunction. It leads to a distortion of their little sexual organs. It's no other category of citizen would be treated in this way. And I want to be really clear about this. Ireland is completely different from any other jurisdiction in Europe in this regard. We are completely different, and this document is the very expression of a Tory Dickensian view of the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. I know it's not a magic bullet, but I'll be arguing, and will always argue, that disability allowance should be a universal, non-means tested payment. It should be a supported living payment. I want to say something else to you while I'm here, and to thank Bernard for his very, very generous introduction. I'm here because I am a parent and a carer, and I am mandated under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. There's a section in there that demands that parents and carers like me should speak to the lived experience of disability. That is the only reason why I went into politics. It's the only reason why I've spoken to the Cllr referendum, or I've spoken to the Disability Green Paper. I also have a disability, and I've never spoken about it publicly because I did not wish to. I have an acquired injury which relates back to my military service, which has led to life-limiting and life-altering consequences for me. And I and my family have lived with that and the consequences of it over the years. There are a cohort of voices that say, that describe me as a non-disabled male. And I have to tell you, I find that very, very offensive. I find it deeply distressing. In the same way that I wouldn't make assumptions about you on your appearance, I would ask our community not to make assumptions about other members of our community on the basis of our appearance or on the basis of our performed gender or what have you. The reason why I've come out with this today, and I don't want to speak about it, because I identify as a carer, and that's my choice. But the reason why I brought it out is because in the last 48 hours, there are NGOs who should know better, who've issued statements that are designed to drive a wedge between carers and disabled citizens. It's a divide and conquer strategy, and I would beg you and I would implore you, don't allow this to get in the way of this wonderful movement. And this is an inflection point. This is a changing point. The government now knows that there are votes in disability. The government now knows that the Irish people want socio-economic rights for disabled people set out in law. And I know that there are some people who say that's not a magic bullet, that won't fix our problems. But that is the point of departure. That's where we have to begin. And that's what will take us on that journey to the full vindication of our human rights. And in relation to the failed referendum on Cllr, thank God. And I thank all the Irish people and all of the wonderful disabled citizens and carers like my son who got out and voted on Friday. But I will bring forward my Disability Rights Bill of 2023. I will bring that forward in the next month or two, because my hope is that the government will be so ashamed of their behaviour that they will actually support it. I am also going to bring forward legislation in the next month or two with a white paper on providing legal rights to supports for independent living for all disabled citizens. I've written an 88-page white paper and a very comprehensive legal document which will come forward and hopefully be drafted before the summer recess, and I will introduce that. I have no other motivation for being in political life. I'm not a member of a political party. I'm not part of a family dynasty. I've done it because of our family's journey and because we want to help all of us, our community. No other reason. And I'll try to get re-elected, but I don't care. My only purpose was to get in and bring forward that legislation and do something measurable, so that when my son looks at me and says, well, what did you do about it? That's what I did. Try, fail again, fail better. I don't care. But I will say finally to you, if we're going to win this war, and it is a war, and the referendum was a battle, this is a battle, the Green Paper. But if we're going to win this war, we have to stick together. And please, let's not be divided, because that is the fervent hope. That's the last sting of a dying wasp from people who should know better in Irish life. And the final thing I will say is, in relation to that referendum, no political party or NGO would have endorsed or favoured a wording that was sexist, because they know that's wrong. No political party would have endorsed a wording that was racist, because they know that it's wrong. And no political party would have endorsed a wording that was homophobic. But they did endorse a wording that was ableist. And I'm not playing hierarchies of oppression or discrimination here. I'm pointing out a fact here, an appalling, ugly truth about Ireland, that 5 political parties and a number of NGOs who purport to represent our interests, think about this, favoured and defended and proactively lobbied for an ableist wording. Now, I'm not setting up a competition or a hierarchy of pain or discrimination. There is, of course, brutal, savage homophobia in this country, and racism. We see it alive and well. We see buildings being burnt down. There is appalling sexism and gender-based violence, and I have a very clear record on that. But what I'm telling you is, what makes us different from everybody else is the idea that so much of our political and civil society were prepared to endorse ableism. But the Irish people came out in very large numbers and voted 3-1 against that. This is a turning point. No more! And we will rock their world. But we must stick together. And I ask you, I beg of you, for your support. Thank you.
And before I bring on the next speaker, I just want, on the topic of the referendum, yes, thank you to the Irish citizens for voting no. But also thank you to the amazing activists that stood against the grain, like Margaret, and all the disabled people like Alana Murphy, who lended their voice to the no vote. Even though, let's be honest, for so many of us, it was really upsetting to stand against these organisations that we would normally fall behind without second guessing. Last other thing, yes, we didn't remove, we were told we were not being feminists by wanting to vote no. However, gender minorities and women are more affected by disability rights than men. Unfortunately, that's just the way it stands. And as a member of DWI Disabled Women Ireland, I think it would be a mistake if I did not mention that this Scrap the Green Paper campaign and this Green Paper will disaffect women in a way that is unknown. The financial dependency for disabled women and gender minorities leads to abuse. We cannot allow that to happen. But I will stop talking and I will introduce Mick Barry from the Socialist Party.
Woo!
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very brief in what I say here. I want to start by saying a few words about the referendum, because there were voices raised against the Cllr amendment from the disability community from the get-go. And as the campaign progressed and developed, it was almost as if there was a rebellion taking place from one end of the country to the other, led by the disability community and by the carers. It was almost as though there was one big room that everyone had gathered in, had a conversation among themselves, and came out of in order to really say, no, this is wrong, it goes against our interests, we are drawing a line in the sand here, and we are demanding our rights. I have to say that at the start of this campaign, myself and my party called for a yes vote. We did so to say that sexist language should be taken out of the Constitution, and we saw the religious right and the far right leading and organising a no campaign on that basis. We could have and should have heard your voices before we did. But when your message went from being a shout to a deafening roar, we decided that a public representative and a party needs to have a mouth, but needs to have a good pair of ears and to be able to listen as well. And with a week to go, and I apologise for the lateness of it, we said yes in the family referendum, no, it has to be a no in the Cllr referendum. And we were late in doing that. And I'm not going to labour the point, but other parties which are against the government, other parties which are on the left, other parties which, have spoken up for the rights of people with disabilities, other parties should have listened as well and should resolve now never to make that mistake again. So I just wanted to say that. 2 points in conclusion. On the issue of the Green Paper, we saw Leo Varadkar's vision, his neoliberal vision of how things should operate in Irish society in that infamous and horrible interview that he did on the television a week before the vote. We pledged to fight all the way to scrap this paper and to support the people power protests that are going to be organised in the next while. I'll finish with an offer. Is on Wednesday the 10th of April, the Socialist Party, myself, have the option of having a 2-hour debate in the Dáil on any issue that we choose. Right? It can be a bill, it can be a motion on any issue that we choose. We want to use that 2-hour debate for a debate on issues relating to disability. And in the space of the next short while, that we would like to organise a discussion and discussions with you, with your groups and with your organisations, and hear your suggestions as to what should be contained in that bill or in that motion that goes forward, and maybe discuss what kind of a campaign might be run in the run-up to it to push things on, because things have been pushed on over the last week. The rebellion that we organised had a really big effect. It had a big effect in terms of the vote, and I hope it has a big effect in terms of the thinking of all the groups and political groups that could and should be supporting you right down the line. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Before I go to the next speaker, one of the organising groups of this protest, this coalition, is Disabled Women Ireland, who do incredible work for the disability community, disabled community even. They speak in the Dáil, they speak in the Oireachtas, they're on multiple committees, spoken to the EU, they are incredible. If you don't know them, look them up. But the Secretary of Disabled Women Ireland sent me this to read out to y'all, because unfortunately disabled people also are disabled and we're not always able to come along and do speeches. But Gillian Kearns from Disabled Women Ireland says, the disabled community's fears of the implications of this green paper are seemingly vindicated following the Taoiseach's comments on the Cllr referendum last week. Are we truly to believe that a government that believes that it's not the state's responsibility to provide care is putting forward a paper with our best interests at heart? Or is it more likely that we are, in fact, right about our concerns? So thank you, Gillian, for sending that, and thank you, Disabled Women Ireland, for all the work you've done, both in this protest and every working day. And next up, we have Áine again, is going to grace our presence with sharing a piece that an amazing advocate, Blezzing Dada, who cannot be here today, sent in. So, Áine.
So I'm reading this piece on behalf of Blezzing Dada. They're a mental health activist who is chronically ill, sick and disabled. When we see certain things such as collective care or social responsibility as burdensome rather than pleasurable, it's important to question why. Individualism is a white supremacist ideology that has convinced you not to care about others. Ableism convinced you that your health is untouchable if you do X, Y, and Z. Capitalism convinced you to return to normal so the rich can continue to profit off bad health. Fascism convinced you to collective care is a restriction and eugenics is freedom. Community care is beautiful. What makes you feel safe? What can we do to extend safety to others? For me, I want safety to be mundane and also a bit dreamy. Being disabled is a class that anyone and everyone over their lifetime can and will enter. Your activism has to be intersectional because other marginalised identities are manifestations of ableism itself. COVID safety is not a burden, but it is an opportunity to recognise that all of us are interconnected. Every day it becomes clearer that we must rely on ourselves to take care of ourselves and each other, especially seeing the conversations on the Cllr referendum the last few weeks. If we desire truly liberatory mental health policy and community care, we must intentionally extricate ourselves from these dynamics and be mindful of the ways in which we have caused harm in our previous embodiment of them. This is especially crucial work for us who do activism and advocacy work. We are alive at times of mass disabling events with the ongoing genocide in Palestine and with this week marking 4 years since the WHO announced that we were in a pandemic. We still are. Analyse your behaviour and ask why COVID precautions are no longer important to you. Is your community, your loved ones and your own health not a priority? Do not fall into apathy because of peer pressure and systemic gaslighting. BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, disabled individuals, immigrants, working class, homelessness, Poor people are most vulnerable and disproportionately affected by COVID. In a time where there's blockages to Palestine, no food, bombs, shelters, inaccessible drinking water, medicine, no healthcare, no PPE, spread of diseases, why take your health or access to resources for granted? It's a privilege. Every repeat infection you get can worsen damage, even if the results of the damage are not clear to you yet. COVID has been outsmarting a lot of tests, and many of you reading this or hearing this have already had it more times than you realise. Preliminary research is showing that COVID infection damages the CD8 plus T cell response. This is the same way HIV weakens the immune system, resulting in susceptibility to viral infection that the body could otherwise neutralise or combat. Look for inclusive communities wherever you are. 8% studios and mask block era, and if there's nothing local, create it. Be the change. Cleaning the air is climate justice, cleaning the air lowers concentration of viruses, cleaning the air improves indoor air quality. Let's build a better, healthier world together. Making a lasting change in behaviour is rarely a simple process. It usually involves deep-rooted commitment in morals and values, via time, effort and emotion. It's one thing to participate or uphold certain behaviours cluelessly. It's another thing when presented with statistics, research, facts, people in your proximity talking about a topic, the representation being there and still doing the same behaviours. Collective liberation is not selective on your comforts. It is radical, expansive, challenging and beautiful. While away abroad to fight an illness that has seen me battle through chemotherapy and endless hospital visits the last 2 years, while still being a worker to afford the cost of living, I want to thank every individual that has been there in community care via still taking precautions. This government does not care about people living with mental health issues and disabled people. Ireland has the worst rate of employment for disabled people in Europe. Disabled people do not have marriage equality. If you rely on disability allowance, it will and can be cut if you move in with or marry a partner. Ireland violates the UN CRPD every day. I ask that you make a submission to the public consultation on the Green Paper before March 15th, and I ask for it to be completely scrapped. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm in demand today. I just want to acknowledge we only have 2 more speakers, so thank you for taking the time to stay with us. But before we move on, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of those who support us, whether you are an individual, whether you're a politician, but in particular to our coalition organisations. In terms of organising this protest, putting out the press releases, putting out extension requests, all that jazz, we had Neuro Pride Ireland, Disability Power Ireland, Disabled Women Ireland, Chronic Collective. Today we're all the DPOs, led and run by disabled people only. And then we also have the amazing Access for All Ireland and Praxis Artists Union. And we are also going to take a moment to thank our supporting organisations, which is Cllr Leader Forum, Dada, Disabled Artists and Disabled Academics, EDS for Ireland, Long COVID Advocacy Ireland, Trinity Student Union, USI Union of Students in Ireland, Project Arts Centre, Rosa, the Opposed Reform of Disability Allowance, ME Advocates Ireland, UCD Students for Sensible Drug Policies, and I particularly want to say thank you to them for being the first people to sign up to the coalition. And oh, sorry, not my phone. So Wexford Pride, Dundalk for Change, and then My Baby by Ireland. So next we have one of the main organisers since we started in October, one of the people that came and rallied us all together and has kept us going. If you have received emails, chances are it's from Mariam. So no introduction needed. Mariam, Disability Power Ireland.
Thank you everyone for taking time after a difficult few weeks to come here today. Every single one of you here is a keeper of the flame, and every single one of you has a voice, and you're not using it very much today. You're all very quiet. I want to hear every single one of you. Every single one of you, I want to hear you raise your voice to me, okay? Okay, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Every one of you is a keeper of a flame, and right now our collective fire is burning bright. We're here again 3 months later, still calling for the green paper to be scrapped. But this time, something has changed. For what feels like the first time, the government is being forced to listen to us. This is what we know, what we've always known, and what this referendum has proven. That change comes from the ground, led by the people. That's all of us right here. It always has, it always will. All power to the people. 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 Louder. All power to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people. When every major party in government, including those on the left who claim to support us, thank you for your humility today, by the way, for all of the people who came earlier, and all of the puppet NGOs run by non-disabled people who claim to be able to represent and speak for us, were saying yes, yes. A wave of strong disabled voices stood up and said, hell no! They opened eyes nationally to the appalling ways in which we are viewed and treated in this country. About how we must just be grateful for those who help carry the burden of our existence. And how dare we have the audacity to push a human rights rhetoric, as the CEO of Family Carers Ireland called it, whenever we try to assert that we are subjects of human rights law and not objects, that we are holders of rights, including that of care and to live independently in the community, under Article 19 of the UNCRPD, which also states that persons with disabilities have access to a range of in-home, residential and other community support services, including personal assistance, necessary to support living and inclusion in the community. So yes, Leo, it is the state's job to provide this. Every person in the street could see this, and they voted no with us. Yes. The government's ignorance is perfectly encapsulated by this green paper. We said it before, but we'll say it again, now that the public may finally be hearing us. The green paper is an insult to human rights and dignity. It is a slap in the face to the disability rights movement and everything that we have been calling for decades. Everything we mean when we say that disability rights are human rights. Disability rights are human rights. Disability rights are human rights. We know how dangerous this policy is. It is nothing but an austerity measure similar to the Tory policy, as Tom Clonan was saying there, of fit-to-work assessment for disability allowance, which saw suicide rates double to nearly half of all disabled recipients in the UK. And make no mistake, we have done our civic duty and engaged with this nonsense. We have attended the inaccessible consultations at which one of the organisers of this protest had their wheelchair broken because they couldn't get into the building, and visually impaired attendees had no idea what was on the slides. We were told by experts at these consultations that it was very important for disabled people not to be on benefits for too long, or we may get too comfortable and never get into employment. These consultations in the Green Paper assume that we are the problem, because we are the lazy scroungers, living the high life with nothing better to do on a maximum of €9,000 a year. 9,000 a year does not even cover rent, let alone living expenses. It does not even cover the additional cost of living with a disability, which the Unicon report found to be between 9,000 and 12,000 a year. We are so sick of stating that statistic over and over again, but now that people are finally getting a glimpse of the truth in this referendum, now that maybe they're listening, let's tell them the truth again. This green paper only came about because disabled people themselves and their DPOs were not consulted with from the beginning at every stage of the process, which is a requirement under the UNCRPD. Even when we are invited, it's never paid because the expertise and the lived experience of disabled people is not valued. While everyone else at the table, the non-disabled people who represent us, are on 60 to 105k salaries, exorbitant salaries that went to the people being paid to put this green paper abomination together. Exorbitant salaries that will go to the independent consultants who will have to medically assess every single one of us who already know we're disabled. We already know this. Every single one of the over 250,000 people already in receipt of disability allowance, which could potentially cost close to 23 million. I'm guessing we'll have to do the stats, but it's going to be pretty high, the same amount that was wasted by the government on this referendum. And I actually have a copy of the green paper here. Let me just get it out.
Burn it.
So for everyone who needs an audio description, Madani, a brown person in a wheelchair, is holding up the green paper. This is a roll of toilet paper. So yeah, Minister Humphreys, this is what we think of your green paper. The green paper is toilet 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 paper. That's it. The green paper is toilet paper. Yeah. The green paper is toilet paper. The green paper is toilet paper. Okay, who wants it? Who wants it? Thank you.
So you can tell we're not in lockdown anymore, considering we weren't fighting over that. Our last speaker today, our last speaker, and then I'm going to bravo on for a minute, is the amazing Emilie Conway from Disabled Artists and Disabled Academics.
All right, I was kind of being relaxed there. Okay, well, since the arts, and I don't think there was any music here, maybe I'll sing a bit of a song that I wrote in response to all this toilet paper. It seems as if you're serious about respecting and including us. Well, it's about time. It's about time disabled people shine. But you offer this green paper, dehumanizing and degrading. Oh, isn't it time? It's our time. It's our time. Diversity and disability, we're a marginalized community. It's about time. About time, disabled people shine. Replace tokenism and disposability with accessibility and sustainability. Isn't it time? It's our time. It's our time. So when you want to hire someone, why not hire someone who lives different to you? With the able. We've got heart and mind and soul and dreams, intelligence and endless creativity. Isn't it time? It's our time. It's our time. Because we're artists, directors and policy makers, it sits front of house and backstage quarters cleaners. We're hecklers and hackers, hangers on and raisers. We're dancers, designers, has-beens and whiners. And we're actors and acrobats, clowns and accountants, stunt fighters, lighting crew, audio describers, producers and ambitious administrators, sopranos, baritone sound engineers. We're all ears for change. Whether applauded or heinous, derivative or genius, aesthetic, pathetic, celebrated, star-rated. It's our time, it's our time. So listen to us, let's get serious. We need you to join with us. Fight this systemic injustice. Hiya! For though we work a day, our impairments stay. But the state takes our disabilities more away. It's not fair that way, it's not right that way. We need change today, we need change today. It's our time, it's our time, it's our time, it's our time. Thank you. All right, we'll defeat the green paper and disability rights are human rights.
Thank you, Emilie. Apparently, chanting, speeches and music is the way we do protests. Second time. Thank you all so much for coming out today. Thank you to everybody who organised, everybody who spoke, everybody who shared our stuff online. I'm not going to bother trying to name people because I'm going to forget, but yous are all incredible. And I want to make sure that yous keep using hashtag #ScrapTheGreenPaper and keep this message going. Try to spread the word to people who haven't heard about it. I'm sure there's someone out there. But I would like to take this moment to invite you all, if you're comfortable, no pressure, to come in front of the banner so we can show these are the voices that need to be heard. I want to get a lovely photo for the social media because we demand to be heard. Because what do we want?
Scrap the green paper!
We can do that again. What do we want?
Scrap the green paper!
Ottawa!
Woo!
And you can all disperse then.
I'm sorry. We got everyone in.